Shabbat Shalom. I hope all is well. Today I wanted to have a conversation, a timely conversation on the road about what today actually is. This is not something that we're going to be taught in our theologian education. This is not something we're going to be taught in school. This is not something we're going to be taught anywhere. This is something that has been concealed by God's design for generations, for the revived generation to restore this understanding. What am I talking about? Well, we know tomorrow, daylight savings time for the East Coast, for the Central, for the Mountain, for the exception of Arizona, and for California. We go into daylight savings time tonight. Why? What is so significant about today that we're not being told about? Well, let's start by looking at the month of September. For those who may not know the prefix within inside September, septi. Septi means seven. Ok, the prefix. Octagon. Octopus. October is 8. Novum is 9. Deca or Deci is 10. January 11. February 12th. The Romans knew our system of time, or God's system of time. They always knew it. It wasn't changed until modern time. Where am I going with this? So if February is really the 12th month, then sometime in March marks the new year, the real new year. You know, as a kid, it never made sense to me that the new year was in the heart of winter. That as a kid, I was like, that doesn't make sense. Lo and behold, as an adult, it was revealed to me. So, we had leap year this year. We had a 29th day in February, right? Let's start connecting some dots. For those who have taken the time to read the record of Enoch, which for those who have done their homework, they know this is an inspired record. To this day, this has been the only record in God's inspired that explains the system of time. Genesis 1:14 tells us that God gave us the sun and moon to keep time for seasons and holy days. To keep time. The sun and the moon are literally hands on a clock, if you know how to use them correctly. Guess what the adversary cannot change? He cannot change the laws that guide the sun and moon. Therefore, he can't change the construct by which time operates, but he can change the way that we look at it. Daniel 7:25. They would look to change times and laws, and it would be given unto them for a time and a dividing of time. So for a period of time, God authorized and allowed the confusion and the understanding of time and season. In fact, in Jubilees, there's prophecy given that the order of time would be dislodged from its order, and mankind would make clean days unclean and unclean days clean. So, what is today? Today is one of 2 days in the year where daylight and night light are equal. Now, in the book of Enoch, it will tell you that on the last day of the year and the first day of the year, marked by the 52nd Sabbath, the 364th day of the year, you will have 9 parts day, 9 parts night. What does that mean? 9 and 9, 18. 18 parts, 18 hours, right? Prior to Egypt changing our system of hours from 80 minutes to 60, there were 18 hours in a day because there were 80 minutes in an hour. So, what Enoch is saying is, you will know the last day of the year because it will be equal part day, equal part night. In our system of time, because our measurement of hours are different, you're talking 12 hours day, 12 hours night. In Enoch's time, when you had 80-minute hours, It was 9 hours day and 9 hours night. So, today marks the last day of the year according to God's system of time. At sundown, that will be the new day, because we know that in the beginning, the evening and the morning mark the new day. It's the sundown that starts the new day, not midnight. That's something that pagans came up with. And so tonight when the sun sets, that is the new year. New beginnings, spring, bloom, new beginnings, new year. And for most of you who pay attention, you can see a drastic shift in the weather right around the new year. Almost like on schedule. For those who pay attention to nature, you have probably experienced, if you live in the South, the birds just left, maybe a week ago, on their voyage back to their homes in time for the new year. Nature knows the new year. Nature has never forgotten. We have. And so 364, not 365, it's 364 days. God's number of completion is 7. 7 is divisible into 364, mathematically perfect. 365 is not. The reason you have a leap year every 4 years is because using a 365-day calendar, you have a quarter of a day unaccounted for. You have a quarter of a day unaccounted for every year. And on the 4th year, the pagans had to make a correction to realign their calendar with the sun and moon, which they cannot change. This is the year of correction. This is the year that the pagans add the additional day. 4 quarters equal a whole. 4 quarters of a day equals a whole day. Hence, the leap day every 4 years. But God's calendar never changed. 364 days, 13 Sabbaths in a season. The end of each season is always a Sabbath. The last day of the year is always a Sabbath. We're on the 52nd Sabbath. We're on the 91st day of the season, which is a Sabbath. The 13th Sabbath of the winter season. The 52nd Sabbath of the year, the last day of the year. Tomorrow is the first day of the new year. Mathematically perfect. And it never changes. And it never will. And so, when you read scripture and you hear, or you look in the law, and you see that in Deuteronomy, for instance, it talks about how to keep the holy days according to God's system of time. The only thing that Deuteronomy instructs you to is to count forward from the first day of the year. But there's no book in the 66 book Bible actually tells you what the first day of the year is. The reason this is the case is because they, in that time, naturally knew to use the sun and moon to determine the first day of the year. They naturally knew it. That was something at that time that wasn't a mystery. When Moses was in the mountain communing with the Most High, the book of 2nd Baruch explains that God gave him a lot of information and told him some things to reveal to Israel and some things to conceal. One of the things he instructed him to conceal was the understanding of times. So there were certain things that we weren't given access to because prophecy had to be fulfilled. And a remnant would come along 2,000 years after the death of Christ and get their hands on the understanding of certain things that was concealed up to that point, fulfilling the prophecy of Daniel 7:25. They would look to change times and laws. So here we are, the last day of the year, the 52nd Sabbath of the year, the 13th Sabbath of the winter season. At sundown, it's the new year. Now, there are some who think that in scripture, whenever it mentions in English new moon, it is talking about the moon in the sky or moon phases. And there's actually a prophecy in the book of Jubilees that explains, hey, there will be some who will assuredly use the moon to try to tell time, and they will go off by 10 days a year. So anyone who attempts to use the moon to tell time by itself will go off course 10 days a year. The sun and moon work in tandem, just like man and woman. In fact, in the Lost Records, it explains to you that the sun is masculine in function, meaning it leads, and the moon is feminine in function, means it is a helpmeet for the sun. So you're supposed to use the sun and moon in tandem to be able to understand time. There are some who use the moon by itself to tell time, and they go off course 10 days a year. This is why the Jewish calendar is off. For anybody who's done their research and they are trying to restore themselves to the things of Israel, the traditions of Israel, the first thing they'll make a mistake in doing is attempting to use the Jewish calendar to tell time. And if for anybody who's looked into it, the Jewish calendar has 354 days. It is 10 days short of God's system of 364. You know why? Because they use the moon to tell time. And Jubilees and Enoch explain to you and warn you that if you attempt to use the moon to tell time, you will go wrong in your orders, your understandings, your holy days. Everything will be dislodged from its order. Now, the terminology new moon. We understand that language is an attempt to capture a concept. The concept by which was translated to new moon has nothing to do with the moon in the sky. It has nothing to do with moon phases. The concept by which was translated to mean in English new moon, the concept is new month of months. Here's what that breaks down to be. In a season, you have 30 days in each month in a season. There's 3 months in a season. Each month is 30 days. So naturally, at the 3 months, you would have 90 days. At the end of the 3rd month, you have one additional day. You have one additional day, which marks as the changing of seasons. It is called the new moon, or the day representing the new month of months. That additional day, that 91st day, is always the 13th Sabbath of the season. It never changes. It never changes. So again, you have a 30-day month, a 30-day month, a 30-day month, then one additional day, which is always the 13th Sabbath, the 13th Saturday in that season. That is the new moon, the new month of months. The very next day is the new season. So in the Bible, whenever you see them talk about, hey, we're accounting something or setting some time by a new moon, what they're telling you is it is the 13th Sabbath of whatever season they're referring to. That is the concept. So when you see that in scripture, when you see them talking about, hey, we will know because it'll be the new moon of this season or the new moon, they're not talking about anything dealing with moon phases. You have some Hebrew Israelite groups out here, some people who are attempting to keep Sabbath by using the moon. That is a unlearned understanding, and they lack the context and the concept to understand what new moon is actually referring to. It's referring to the 91st day of a particular season. That's what it's referring to. And so you cannot keep God's calendar, his holy days, without knowing what the first day of the year is. You have to know that. This is why books like Enoch are so important, because Enoch is literally the only book that explains how you determine by using the sun and moon in its natural function how to tell time, how to tell what the first day of the year is. And so tomorrow, what happens? The days get longer until the first day of summer, and then the days start getting shorter until the first day of the fall. And on the first day of the fall, you have equal parts day, equal parts night. The very next day, the days start getting shorter until you make it around to today, the last day of the year, 364th day of God's calendar year. The holy days. for those who have read about them in the law, you will see in the book of Deuteronomy, it tells you to count forward 10 days from the first day of the year, which now we know is tonight. And on the 10th day of the year, you start to prepare for Passover and the Feast of Unleavened Bread. What it's telling you to do is hey, Passover is on the second Saturday of the year. So 2 Saturdays from now, we have Passover, the correct Passover, the correct Feast of Unleavened Bread. And on the 10th day of the year, you are to prepare for Passover. Now, for those who understand that one of the traditions of Passover is you are to remove all leaven, all yeast-containing products from your house, you're going to need about 4 days to prepare for that. Because if you look at all the things in the modern world that have yeast in it, there's a lot of cleaning you have to do to get that stuff out your house. Now, all of your holy feasts, they're always 7 days. God's number of completion is always 7. 7 years your cells regenerate. 7 years you let the land rest on the 7th Sabbath year to let it replenish its nutrients. There's everything that God does is in sevens. The visibles of 7. 49 years is 7 sevens, which is Jubilee. You know, it's always 7. So, you'll find that the Feast of Unleavened Bread and Passover is on the second Sabbath. You'll find that 49 days, 7-7, 49 days after that, to my understanding, if I don't have my notes in front of me, but if I recall correctly, 7-7 after that, or 49 days after Passover, you have the Feast of First Fruits. At the half point of the year, the first day of the fall, according to God's system of time, you have the Feast of Trumpets. All of your feast days are 7 days long. All of your feast and holy days always start on Sabbaths. All of your feast days end on Sabbaths. 7 days, from Sabbath to Sabbath. God's system of order is mathematically perfect. You don't need a leap year. You don't need to correct yourself. No, what God created in the beginning was perfect. It didn't need man's intervention. It was perfect in the beginning. You know, and so the reason I'm having this conversation today is because this actually marks the last day of the year according to what we see in the sky. Equal parts day, equal parts night. And it says that it's marked by the new moon. Now we know that new moon means it is the 91st day of the season. It is that one additional day at the end of the third month, the 91st day, which is the 13th Sabbath of that season. And that's how you confirm. Anytime anything exists with God, there's always a confirmation. God doesn't do anything in singularity. It's always a confirmation. Anything that has been established, there's always a confirmation. If there's no confirmation, maybe it's not God's. Because I can tell you right now, in Scripture it tells you, you know the last day of the year, because it is a Sabbath, it's the 364th day of the year, and it is confirmed by the fact that it is the 91st day in the last season of the year. It is moved and properly seconded. Robert Rules of Order follows a biblical construct. For something to be moved and properly seconded, that means it has been witnessed. So, 364th day, the 52nd Sabbath in the year, the 91st day in the fourth season, the evening and morning is the new day. When the sun sets, Happy New Year. Just wanted to leave you guys with that today. I hope everyone has a blessed day. For those who observe God's calendar, Happy New Year. Catch you on the flip side. Shabbat Shalom.